Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to my session, Change Management for Your Life. It is a personal journey of discovery, and I know that those are some of the cheesiest words you ever want to hear. But I thought we needed a little pep talk in the middle of the afternoon. So in case you don't know me, that's me, Jodi Wagner. I am an engagement manager at Blue Wolf. I do a couple things. I'm actually one of the co-organizers of this event. And before anybody was worried, I actually had to submit an abstract, so there's no favoritism here. You can also find me with the Women in Tech group and the developer user groups. I hang out with them regularly. I also have 2 blogs, but they're not very current, and you'll find out why during this talk. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story. Simon had come to me and asked me to do a talk about what I've gone through over the last couple of years. He thought it would be inspirational. I'll let you guys decide if it's inspirational. When I left university, way back when, and I embarked on my career, I thought that was what your career was supposed to look like. Isn't that what we all learn at university? You get a job, you learn a little bit more, you learn a little bit more, and you keep climbing the ladder until you get to this top part where you're like, yippee, I've made it. So that's really what I thought our career journey was supposed to look like. I'd get more responsibilities. That was the dream. That's what we all do. So that's what I thought I had in store once I left university. My career trajectory looks more like that. Anybody else's look kind of like that? Yeah. So when they tell you in university you're going to get a job and you're going to do a little bit more stuff and you're going to manage people and you're going to do this and you're going to do that and you leave with stars in your eyes, that's actually the reality. So what I learned in those first few years of corporate life is 2 things. Change is constant. If you can't handle change, you're probably not going to do well in any job. The other is the environment that you work in. The environment that you work in can make a really big difference. And during this time, I learned how good a manager can be for you, right? So it's the person you report to. Sometimes they're your champion. They kind of give you that, you got this. But not only did I get those, you got this, girl, you can do this, American, you're so awesome. I also got, well, why are you leaving? And in my head, I'm thinking, remember, the career trajectory, more opportunities, more responsibilities, I'm going to keep following that track. But I had managers that made me feel like a traitor for leaving and wanting something for myself. I also had a few managers who thought sexual innuendo was funny, but it's really not. Don't do that. So I felt like I ran through the gamut of managers in my career. And one of the things that I did take away, and I encourage a lot of people to do this as well, think of 5 of the best things you've learned from a manager. Or actually, it could be anybody, a champion. It could be anybody in your organization or a mentor. And think of the 5 worst things. Do the 5 best. Don't do the 5 worst. So I thought that was really, really important. And it sounds really strange, but I took that to heart and carried that through most of my career in industry. I started my career in industry actually in financial services and insurance, not Salesforce. And I was doing all these things and doing this career trajectory now because now I'm learning more about business analysis and technology, and I'm doing the 1 step forward, 2 steps back, lateral moves. Anybody else kind of do that type of career trajectory where, yeah, sometimes to get that 1 step ahead, you need to learn a whole new plethora of skills to get there, which is why this seems about normal. So I hit a point where I actually had moved into a position where I was managing teams of people, multiple Salesforce orgs. I had just finished, I had a portfolio of about 7 projects under me at any one time. I had just finished a $1.5 million project relaunching Salesforce for 13 business units. I hit the UP, right? I was bored out of my mind. And I'm pretty sure you're all sitting here going, how can you be bored with that much responsibility? Because it doesn't do anything for me, right? So while I was doing the 1 step forward, 2 steps back, lateral moves, this moves, I was actually contributing to myself. I was learning new things. I was meeting new people. I was doing just traveling, all these different things, which really refill your cup. Another cheesy phrase, but I don't have a better way of saying it. Basically, what fulfills you. So at that point, I felt I'd hit a crossroads. I could stay where I was, and the next move was going to be on that upward career trajectory, and I would stop doing Salesforce, and I would just be managing teams of people, a P&L. I mean, that was my original dream, right? That whole idea seems stupid to me. My first thought was, but I have this great set of skills. Why would I drop those just to manage people? People are great, but managing you guys on a full-time basis, like that just didn't do it for me. That didn't sound like a challenge. So I decided after all of that work and not getting a pay rise that year to move on to consulting. Before anybody says to me, gosh, you must be crazy. I got all these comments from managers like, but what about your career trajectory? Like, who goes into consulting? Like, you're just gonna work 1 million hours and travel 100% of the time, and gosh, that's a really stupid idea. But what I ended up doing, remember, it's kind of a theme now, the 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I was in that previous role working 80 to 90 hours a week. I had no time for me. So even though I thought I was on that upward arrow and I thought I was doing all the things, I found myself bored and I was working all the time. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't spending time with family and friends. I wasn't doing those things that you need to do to be happy. So that's why I made that decision. I figured I needed to do something for me. So when I moved into consulting, I dropped managing people. I actually dropped managing 80 to 90 hours a week, or working 80 to 90 hours a week. I took on a position as a solution architect. And that gave me a chance to use my Salesforce skills, but also those steps back where I learned how to consult, because I don't know if anybody's gone from client to consulting. It is a vastly different mindset. For once, not everything is your fault. So I was able to focus on my own development. Went and got certifications, I did all this other stuff. I contributed to me. So that was a really big part of me because I decided to put time and effort into personal development. So when I talk about personal development, it doesn't just mean, how I'm gonna be at work, what I'm gonna do at work. Because I'll pretty much tell you as I go through the rest of this, I spent a lot of time at work and I started to think of everything as like a project, which I will get into a little bit more. And I looked at all these different things that I wanted to do. I figured I already moved into consulting, I was already learning new things. So what else could I do for me? What else could I do to refill my cup? Especially this career-focused people pleaser me that, just wants to do a good job and get praise and a pay rise next time around. So I started to focus on the personal development. And after a couple years in consulting, I had one of those really bad years again. Those years, I don't know if you guys have had this, where you just stop and take stock and go, what am I doing? Anybody else have one of those? Lots of nodding. Right, so I like this slide because it says it's not just about like how I can do a better job at work. Because if I'm not putting time into hanging out with family and friends, taking care of myself, even if it's just, sometimes you just need a day on the sofa with some Netflix. If I'm not doing all of these things, I'm gonna kind of suck at work, right? Because I don't have anything left to give. So after this really difficult year, my manager came to me and said, we have a 3-month assignment in London. All right, I can do that. It's kind of a cool place. Kind of hang out a little while. 3 months. So I decided to do that, came here, 3 months turned into another year, and they'd asked me to stay on full time. By that point, I probably had met most of you, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. So I was like, oh, I don't want to go back. I have all these new friends. I'm having such a great time. I love living in London. They asked me to stay on full time. I said, okay. So this was July, 3 years ago. Signed the paperwork, get ready to go home to go, rent out my house, get to Dreamforce 2015, and the first day of Dreamforce, our company's been bought by a large GSI, as the slide says. So I actually really like that sign. Welcome to disappointment. I'd never wanted to work at this GSI, so now I'm thinking in my head, I've moved to another country, global system integrator. I'm trying not to say the name. So I never had wanted to work for this company. It didn't really fit my personality. Anybody who's grown up in the Salesforce ecosystem, which I'd like to say I'm vintage, 2004 is when I started working with Salesforce. We were used to being really nimble and quick and small, tiny little places. We were not used to your big GSIs of the world where people wore suits and ties and they talked management consulting speak. We were just like, well, what are you talking about? That's not what we do. But unfortunately, my visa had me tied to a company. So what do you do? I really had 3 options in front of me. I could leave and go somewhere else. I can go back to the US and get another job, or I could stay and try to make it work. So I stayed and tried to make it work. I made it about 9 months. Big GSI life is not me. And I really started to think through this. And I spent a lot of time. I didn't like it. And I kind of listed off all the reasons why I didn't like it. So what I ended up doing is, because I'm a project manager by trade, using the ad card change management model, which sounds really, really nerdy. But what the ad card change management model is about is awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So I went through the awareness phase. What were all the things that I knew about that I wanted to change, right? So building awareness of the issue. I didn't like my job. I knew I couldn't stay. There was all these different pressures that were on me. Desire, wanting to make a change. Oh boy, did I want to make a change. I felt like I had no option but to make a change. There's only so many days you can call in sick to work. Did I want to invest in supporting the changes being made? Well, that depends. What are the changes being made? So I sat down and made a list. Ever the project manager, I had a list. I had a number of different things I could do. I could move back to the States. I could go to a different country. And I kind of started exploring all my options. I landed on a really interesting one. I decided to go back to school. By the way, if you ever want to take a career break, that is not the easiest way to take a career break. Go sit on a beach. But what I was able to do is I applied for a master's program, and I went back to school. So this middle one was really, I felt really hit the nail on the head, right? Developing the skills to enact the change, creating the knowledge needed to succeed. It comes with a little cap for graduation. It was preordained, right? I should go back to school. So that's what I did. I actually just finished my master's program 3 weeks ago. Thank you. So yes, I will tell you that was really hard. Don't do it, unless you really want to do it. But following this model, did I have the ability to put the changes in practice? Was I able to envision and realize them? And then how can I reinforce them? So what I followed was, I looked around me, figured out what my situation looked like. I felt like desire, not really sure I had a choice here because, like I said, there's only so many days you can call in sick. Knowledge, I did a lot of research. a lot of research and picked a school, picked a program, did all this stuff, applied. Ability, that's a hard one. Can you make those changes? So if we think about something even smaller, like, I don't know, quit smoking, any number of changes, you can use this model. But ability, a lot of times, depending on the change you want to make, sometimes by not changing, you actually get reinforcement from not doing it. Let me give you an example. Even though I just told you all this stuff, I'm a horrible procrastinator. Makes no sense as a project manager. Project manager, everything's done 10 days beforehand. Personal, me, Jodi? Yep, I was doing my slides last night. I'm a horrible procrastinator, but the reason why I think I can continue to do it, because I think I'm more creative when I'm up against a deadline. So that ability part is really important, along with reinforcement. Can you do it? Can you make it? Can you make it stick? So I know it's really nerdy that I used a change management model to put that together, but I felt like that was a way for me to take my project manager side and look at what the benefits were, what the drawbacks were. Because taking on a master's program is nothing that anybody should do on a whim. If you think you want to do it on a whim, please come talk to me. But like I said, as of 3 weeks ago, with all of this, my whole entire outcome was that I wanted to be able to find a way to get out of the job I was in, stay in the country that I like, maybe learn some new things along the way, and come out with the outcome of getting a senior level job, knowing that it's going to look like a pot of spaghetti in terms of career trajectory, because I actually didn't quite take a year off from work, but I worked part-time and did some contracting. So through all of that, I was able to go through, actually get my master's, and start a job 2 weeks ago. Any questions? I think we have a couple minutes. So my master's is in international business, and which sounds really silly because it's like, you're American, you're living in London, aren't you already doing it? But I learned some new things. And I knew I wanted to stay in the Salesforce ecosystem, but I wanted to get back closer to that arrow of having increased responsibility. So being able to broaden my skills, I actually went from being a project manager to doing more engagement management. So I'm sort of sitting between sales and delivery now and kind of helping to sell into deals. So new set of skills and a new way of using them. Thank you. I thought I saw another hand. I figured international business was a really good fit just because my undergrad is in marketing. And as much as I love Salesforce and everybody's like, well, why didn't you do technology? Technology to me changes, and I can keep track of technology off to the side. But I feel business process and how things run is so much a bigger part of what we do in understanding technology because the business drives the technology. So I probably did about, this is why I said not to do this on a whim. I probably did about a month's research and figured out I could actually switch my visa into another visa and then back out again. So that was kind of part of the driver for it. So I can, like I said in the change model, I was able to kind of do this and stay here. But it put about a month's worth of effort, and that was including getting letters of recommendation, getting my undergrad certificate FedEx from the US, and having to write essays. So I had to step back into essay writing. I think I have 58 seconds. Anything else? No? Yes.
So your journey was unstructured.
That's a very kind way of saying it.
It's a bit of a trite question because you're not at the end of your journey, but was it all worth it? This talk has been what advice you to kind of some of what
I don't think I would give myself any advice in terms of the 1 step forward, 2 steps back, because I think that has given me more depth as well as breadth of knowledge. In terms of whether or not I would go through the same path I did before, no, I would like to make it easier, but I never make anything easier for myself. Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.